I want to share some of what I've learned and about me as a trader, and what I've learned that it takes to be able to stay in the game and to exist in an environment that really isn't friendly to the average retail trader, right? In fact, it's probably not friendly if you really get down to it to many hedge fund traders and stuff, because they just don't. It just takes a really special kind of person to be to persist at trading to a point where you actually begin to achieve a level where you're not only profitable, but you're actually growing principal and taking money out at the same time, that's the holy grail, right? Because you want to keep building your fund, because that's your inventory. So the more cash you have on hand, the better, trading skills. Once you have a system and a process that works, trading skills. All you have to do is keep growing your size. And that to me has always been incredibly sexy about trading. If I can learn how to trade dimes, I can trade dollars. If I can trade dollars, I can trade $10. If I can trade $10, then I can just keep growing and growing and growing. And of course, at each level, we don't get away from the psychological aspects of trading, right? We may be totally comfortable trading $10 a pip, but let's say we get to $100 a pip, and suddenly we're hitting this wall, and we feel like we're doing the same thing, but the results aren't showing up the same way. And that's going to come back to us as the person who's doing the trading. And this is just like star athletes, right? It's so much mental and emotional control. So, so for me, the challenge here is this is an hour discussion, right? And I was telling Josh, I spent the last 5 days, I've just been going back and forth. I've rewritten the outlines so many times. I've rewritten the bullets so many times. And I just realized I'm not going to get everything in an hour. I probably couldn't get everything in a week. So we'll just go where I am. And some of it's going to stick with you. Some of it may not. And that's okay.
We're selling the sequel, baby. We're selling the sequel.
Yeah. So it's an important point here is that when we get into these discussions about personal awareness and change and those kind of things, when David does the hot seat, there's a level of interaction there, that relationship, right? So when he says something to you directly in that hot seat, it's going to land with you. You're going to feel it. You're going to experience it in a very different way than if you're in a group like this. So, and I recognize that. And so just be okay with that, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's just the nature of the beast. But I'm sure there's going to be something for you at some point in this that you can take away from it. So without me getting too carried away, just talking, and you guys just slap me because I'm a talker, so I can keep talking, okay?
You're good, my friend. You got this.
All right. Well, of course, I didn't say that part, right? So I'm going to talk about, to me, mind-bending magic, because that's what we're doing. We're actually learning how to manage ourselves, right? And it does feel magical. And when we get down to that aspect of it, it is the invisible side of trading. Because as traders, we're often taught, or I don't know, we're taught, it's just the way we go through our process of learning and stuff. We just think there's this holy grail, right? If I just get that one thing that works, that's all I need. But you never put yourself in the equation. It's always outside of you. And so that's why this is really, really an important discussion. So breaking the spell. And that's what it is. It's a spell, right? Because how we experience life, how we learn to experience life has a tremendous amount of influence on us. So breaking the spell, these are the bullets that we're going to go through. We're going to talk about making room for change, intention or purpose, you decide, the human dilemma, learned conviction, limitations, setting yourself free, and success. Now, all of this at some point will touch on you as you're trading, but I won't be speaking specifically to trading all the time. Okay, so just be aware that I'm going to cough here. All right, so let's go on to the next one. A lot of quotes. I love quotes. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. And I think if you pay attention to the chats and the hot seats and all those kind of things, this is something that plays out a lot when we talk about ourselves, right? And so we really have to become aware of how we think and how we're, not just how we think, but how we're talking about how we think and how we process. So making room for change. First question, are you where you want to be? I mean, if you are, then you just got to think about, okay, what's your purpose being here, right? If you're not, then what are you wanting to take away from this moment in time? Time's the most valuable thing you have. So just open up with that question with yourself, right? So, and I kept everything basic. There's not a lot of pictures or anything. This is my first time actually flipping through the whole thing. So I'm going to ask you to be open during this conversation. And it's really easy. You know, I know the group. We all have these strong point of views and things like that. And it's easy to say, I know that. But understand that when you say, I know that, and something and information is being shared with you, you immediately create this barrier of your ability to receive everything, to hear everything without a filter, okay? Okay, participation, be present. Participation, I've learned this early on in these moments when we're really working on ourselves and we're among a group. Participation is critical or key to you getting more and more out of it, right? You can be a passive listener and observer, but when you participate, you engage all your senses and things like that, right? And you begin to process at a different level. So participation, be present. Questions are more than welcome. Of course, I don't know the hour, so I shrunk this down as much as I could.
I'll keep you going, my friend. Don't worry.
Okay, Jimmy, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, now, so this is just be open, be curious. Questions are welcome. I think be open and be curious is really critical, I think, in all aspects of life, right?
Sure.
I'm always open and I'm extremely curious about things. And then here we go. This is really important. Now I'm going to share from my experience, right? Things I've learned, things I've done. You get to decide what works. This is me sharing my experience, but you get to decide what works. You get to try it on. If you hear something that says, oh, that makes sense, give it a try, work with it a while, see if it works for you. If it doesn't, don't use it. This isn't about right or wrong. This is about you experimenting and being curious with yourself. Okay, so making room for change, we're still, again, this is my first time flipping through the whole thing. Okay. So change happens with or without your permission. You get to decide how you are going to embrace your change. It's a choice. It's your choice. And I think foundationally, that's the heart of everything when we start talking about ourselves and beginning to master ourselves, manage ourselves. We have to understand that we're responsible for all of that stuff that's happening in here, right? We've got all these inputs coming in, but we actually are responsible for managing it, making the choices, taking the actions, and using something or not using something. That's all on us, on ourselves. So the miracle of this, a typo, I'm sorry. The miracle of the seed and the soil is not available by affirmation. It's only available by labor. Jim Rohn. So think about that, right? That we are in this mean world today, and affirmations they're everywhere, right? But at some point you're going to have to do the work. There is work to do. David said it this morning. Trading is not easy. It takes work. And if you're not prepared to put in that work, that time, how far are you going to get, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, intention or purpose, you decide. And the point there is that, I say intention, you say purpose. You say potato, I say potato.
Intention, purpose. Intention, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So first thing, mindful. We've got and this is critical in trading, right? If you don't settle yourself and come and bring yourself into a mindful state, those charts, especially if you're trying to wanting to wobble, I said try, I apologize, wanting to wobble, and you're working on your wobble, if you're not being mindful of your price cycles and all of those things, it's difficult, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to lose track of things. And so it's really important to be mindful of it. Now, the seeds you plant versus the fruits you harvest. So think about that, right? David kind of touched on that this morning, I think. I can't recall exactly what he said, but we're talking about how many trades Sean takes, right? And I think he said something like to the effect that Sean has never met a bad trade, right? He just takes the trade. And but that's so important, right? The person who's going to take 100,000 trades versus the person who's going to take 10,000 trades, there's going to be something that the 100,000 trades knows differently from the person who only takes 10,000, right?
Absolutely.
There's a level of exposure there that's going to produce a different type of harvest for you. And it's like me where I'm at in my trading. I can talk to a trader, and David, any experienced trader can do this, talk to somebody, and immediately by just a few of the things they say, it's like, oh, yeah, they've got a ways to go. There's still some things they absolutely need to learn. You just know by what's being said, right? Okay, so are you planting enough seeds, which is what we talked about, right? How many trades is it going to take you to master what you're doing? And that's where we got to get to this place. We got to think about that. Master what you're doing. Was it Brandon? This is a race car driver.
Josh, I believe.
Josh. Okay, Josh. Okay, so Josh, you were talking about.
Yeah, he just had the Mercedes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it was you, Josh. I'm sorry, I got you two mixed up. But you were talking about how you spent a year dedicating your weekends to your driving, right? And so think about that. That level, that resolve, actually, I would call that a resolve, right? So that resolve, that resolution, I would say this, the moment you made that resolution with yourself, the magic happened, right? You drew that line and then it happened. So you just need to follow through for the year, but the resolve, the mental change, the shift, the emotional shift, all of that happened the moment you said, this is what I got to do. And you started doing.
I like that, how you really, really said that. And it's like, it's purpose, right? Just as we're talking about here, or purpose. And I can't remember the exact thing, either Dave or probably Dave or Sean, maybe Nate is going over, and this is quite some time ago, but about actually trading with that purpose in mind. What is the purposefulness of the trade, right?
Yes.
And how it kind of really got to me is like, it helps with that psychology, but just why am I actually taking this trade, and to be more accurate, or to have reasons backing, right? To actually trade for the purpose of winning that trade, right?
Well, yeah, there's that. And then I also think about you, Jimmy. I think about you in that picture with you and your daughter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is resolved. Once you get that in your bones, it's like me winning this trade, me being profitable on a consistent basis. This is going to give me more opportunities. I'm planting more seeds with my daughter, with my family, right? More time spent in ways that people that don't do what I do won't have that opportunity, right? And so that's yes, magical.
And I do want a Mustang. I think that's what Josh was saying he was driving. So I want to get it.
Okay. Being human is being a lot of things at the same time. I think this to me seems like such a basic thing, but you really got to think about this. This is real. Being human is being a lot of things at the same time. And I think when you begin to process that, I think you can begin to understand where you are at different places in the day, in different environments, different contexts. I think it's a really important statement. So the human dilemma. Perfection does not exist. Let it go. That's one of the things that listening to David this morning, and it's just like, yeah, you're going to have losses. So and I don't even hear when David talks about it, I don't even hear loss, right? I just like, it didn't work. I'm not going to continue with that. It's kind of like what he had Brandon do. Brandon had all those, I think they were shorts, and he said, just close them. And then they immediately flip position. And in the casual conversation, suddenly he's up almost 1% in a matter of no time at all. And it didn't even seem like they were taking that many trades. So I think there's something extraordinary about that, right? So David embraces the imperfection. He may not call it imperfection, but he operates in that way.
I think I embody that.
Do you? Yeah. Okay.
I am imperfect.
Yeah. There you go. It's such an important understanding.
Well, with trading, gosh, I mean, you want to be, right? There's that psychology.
Yes.
Like you
oh yeah. Yeah.
So much. And that is a great skill set and discipline to be able to do that. And again, purposeful trading, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, the thing that really lit me up when I really started going deep in the trading was, I was like, I don't want to have to be right. I'm not worried about trying to predict everything. I want to learn how to operate in a way that I'm not worried about being right. And so that's what took me to hedging. And so that's where I've become really, really strong at hedging. But now I'm here, because hedging, there's this middle area that not a lot happens. And so I want to learn how to be active in those areas. So not only can my hedge support me, but I can begin to work in the middle of that, begin to build principle while my equity grows through my hedging. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So doing your best. There's Thomas Leonard is his name, and he puts it like this. Each of us are doing our best, even when it's clear to others we are not. And for somebody who's really driven and has to, be doing something perfect all the time, this one thing is so hard to embrace, but it's real because we're not perfect. And by that very truth, guess what? We're not going to be at our best all the time. being human, right? It's more than one thing. And so we have family, we have friends, we have work, we have all kind of things, so many different things that can influence us and that do influence us and have an impact on us, that we have to understand that even when it's clear to others that we're not doing our best, that we're doing our best. We're out there and we're really giving it our best. It's not looking like our best. And you see that if you watch sports all the time, there's going to be days that, something just was off on that particular player, right? They did okay, but you could feel the rhythm wasn't quite right. And so we have that as well. And we're going to have that in trading. A better you. This is the topic.
Yeah, love it.
Well, you may not. It's going in a place that you may not. I'm not a fan of this topic, and I'll tell you why. Because as a human, as a person, we only are present in this moment. We're not going to be any better in this moment than what we are in this moment. So we can absolutely grow our skills. We can begin to master other things, but does that necessarily make us a better you? I don't think it does. And I think this comes back to embracing that imperfection, right? Over time, we grow in skills, but we're not necessarily a better us. And I'm going to break that down a little bit more as we go deeper and touch on more about that. But I think it's a trap that mentally and emotionally can keep you in a race against yourself that you don't win. There's no winning it.
That's an interesting point. Yeah.
Okay.
I like that. Just kind of like, with the kids, right? I kind of feel like, and women and men in general too, with society and how it's projected, right? And it keeps that race going. And so,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I definitely see that point. That's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, and you talked about your children. So I can talk about my oldest son. One of the things that really hit home with me was he is extremely athletic, very gifted. And he pushed me at 6 to play football. Pushed me. I was like, okay, fine. So I ended up coaching, and I learned with him that anytime I pushed him, it shut him down. So I had to learn how to be with him where he was and still teach him to elevate his skill set. And so I couldn't make him gripping the ball wrong, throwing the ball and, catching it, not catching with his fingers and those kind of things. I couldn't make that about him. And I learned to celebrate the moments that really worked. And the moments that were a little bit off, I learned to focus on the things about it that were on point. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, no. And in the first part of your presentation today, James, you had mentioned the statement of, I know that. Right. And you did the exact opposite right there. Right. Yeah. And you allowed yourself to adjust and to learn.
Yes.
Nice.
Well said. But the thing that allowed me to make that adjustment was I saw beyond myself. I saw him.
Sure. Yeah.
I saw the harm that pushing was doing to him. I saw the pain that it was creating in him. I was like, no, we're here. That's not why we're here. If this is about him, then I've got to embrace him where he is.
Yeah, that human dilemma, right? It's tricky.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then show yourself some grace. This is something, I think there's a short supply of grace, especially with ourselves. If it's hard to show others grace if you can't show yourself grace. And in the game of trading, oh my gosh, if you haven't gotten to that place where they was talking about, I think I embody imperfection. Well, if you're not there, you're going to have moments where it just feels like crap, but you get get to show yourself some grace.
Mm.
Because you could actually be making all the best choices and the market just not moving in favor of those choices. In other words, the 20% of the 80% probability of success, that 20% has kicked in, and it feels like shit when that happens.
Sure.
Those are the moments to give yourself some grace, because you are making the choices that will get you the results you want. It's just right now the market's not giving you that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So don't be afraid to be human.
Don't be afraid to be human.
Don't be afraid. And here's the other part of that. And I love this. Here's the tricky part. There's no way for you not to be human. So just remember to be kind with yourself and to show yourself some grace. Because that makes life rich when we give ourselves permission to simply be where we're at. Attitude is greatly shaped by influence and association, Jim Rohn. I think this group shows that well, that the level of conversation that happens a lot, this, you feel like you're inspired to elevate, right, in this group. And I think that's really powerful. And you could be amongst groups that don't do that for you. And
well, hence the reason why we have the teach the learning or learn by
Yeah.
teaching, right? I mean, get you out of your comfort zone. It helps you. It helps you dig into a topic that maybe you're trying to learn more. I mean, just a fantastic part of this community.
Okay, learned conviction. Our perception and our experience is often shaped by the external. And this is so important to grasp. Our early life, we have very little conscious choice or perception of what we're actually doing when we're responding and reacting to the environments that we're living in. School, our parents, all those things, we do feel pain, we do feel fear, and so we respond to those things, but we respond to them without adequate tools. And we carry those things forward. Our experiences are both physical and emotional. There's a really big distinction here, is that our physical and emotional experience are not one and the same. And one of the things that I learned early on, and it's absolutely changed my life, and I would encourage you to experiment with it, is that when you hear people talking about emotions, they don't make this distinction of physical and emotional. So when we have emotion, we tend to experience in our bodies somewhere physical. There's a physical experience to it. The two are separate. And if you can begin to understand that separation, you can begin to manage emotion on a different level, because you begin to understand the physical experience of it. And once you begin to understand the physical experience of the emotion, you begin to understand that, oh, I can handle this. This emotion isn't that bad. I can manage the physical aspects of it. And I had a woman, a friend that I worked with a long time ago, and she used the word frustrated a lot. And I pulled her aside and we chatted, and I said, do you realize what people experience when you use that word with them? And we talked, and she's like, well, I'm just sharing with them what I'm feeling. And I'm like, okay, but you're talking about being frustrated. Think about what you're presenting to the world, right? To others. And so we got to talking about it. And then I walked her through an exercise that walked her in, took her into some of her pain, physical pain. And it was interesting. Once she got to where the pain just kind of faded, she couldn't find it anymore physically. That day, she on her way to the store or something like that, she was playing her favorite CD, and she called me like elated because she had been. Now listen, this is how powerful this is. Because she was emoting so much around where she was, she literally was in that CD. She was skipping like half of the CD and not even realizing that she was skipping half of it. And so she actually was able to listen to the full CD, and it just shook her to the core.
Mm.
Yeah. So yeah.
Definitely gets that. You can definitely get that physical aspect. I know that, specifically with trading, like if I'm down like a lot size, or I'm like down 1.5%, heart starts beating a little bit.
Oh, I think Brandon was a great example. 12 trades. Poor David was, he's like, 12 trades? And you feel pushed or stressed?
Right. Well, you feel flushed, right? And it's just, I like how
that's your breaking point, 12 trades?
And I think as well, it's just different for everyone. But I think that with that exercise, or you finding something that, like you'd mentioned with your friend or your colleague, where you breathing or whatever you're doing, where you can actually get through and tame that emotional aspect of it, right? The physical aspect of it, which is causing by that emotional. Then you can separate the two, and I've got you kind of have this calm. I think, right? You're able to get through the whole CD without skipping.
Exactly. Yeah,
I'm able to get through my trading day without maxing out, right?
Yes.
For fear of being out,
Like so you're down 1.5%. It doesn't break you. I hear David talk about being down 9%. I'm like, oh my God, that breaks me. So my threshold is not there right now, right? I do not enjoy being that close to that kind of number. So, which is okay.
Nice.
Okay, so our perception, our experience is often shaped. I talked about that, pain and pleasure. This underlies everything, right? Pain and pleasure. It plays into everything. It even plays into trading. And I think it's just important to understand how pain drives us and how pleasure drives us.
Mm-hmm.
If you have doubts, you just think about it when you're trading, right?
Oh, for sure. No, for sure.
Yeah.
And so we're coming up on 15. I don't know if you want to pick a closing area or when you want to do that, James, but just let me know for sure. And give enough time for a closing statement and take away.
So are we at stopping place is what you're saying?
Oh, no. I'm just saying we're at, roughly about 15 now. So if you want to,
if
you have something
out?
specific, that you want to kind of takeaways and stuff like that when you're ready.
Putting yourself last. This is something that we learned. I think something we have to learn in trading is, we can't put ourselves last. We really have to hold ourselves in a place where we're doing this for ourselves, for what we want. And taking up space. Yeah, see, I knew I wouldn't be able to get all this on. I trimmed this down. I can't believe I trimmed it down. I'm still falling short. But taking up space, often we learn that we don't have a right to take up space for just being, right? And this is showing ourselves some grace, right? This is holding us in a place that is kind. And we exist for a reason. And the space we take up is okay. Formal education. I think this is an important one. Talk on real quick because formal education is a tough one because we're rewarded for being right and penalized for being wrong. And in trading, that works against us. That puts us, this is one of the counterintuitive aspects of trading, right? Is that it's not about being right. When we work to be right in trading, we're going to struggle. And when we work to be overly analytical about it, right? So precision is actually going to cause a trader more harm When we're overly precise, when we try to be overly precise, it's going to cause the trader more harm as far as results
Mhm.
than reward. And it's really, and that's where that art of trading comes in, right? So we generally know this pattern is a profitable pattern, but we won't always know how the pattern is going to play out. It's going to tend to play out differently every time, even though it may look similar. There's a difference.
I like that. That's we forgot that we don't have to be perfect, right?
Yeah, exactly. Rules, judgment, assimilation, all of that plays into education when we're about being right or being wrong, right? We're judged for those things. The straight A student, right, versus the D student. The accolades of the perfect, ACT score and the not so noticed lower scores. And I say this because this is learned convictions. This is the things that we're taught and we're learned. They're ingrained. They're part of our behavior and thought process. And sometimes to unravel these things, it just takes time. It takes a lot of work, and it's not always fun. So often each of us are not aware of the influence, which is what I'm talking about, that have shaped and continue to influence who we are and how we approach our experience of life. And this is what I'm talking about. So this is one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this, is because we're not always aware of what's influencing us. This is one of my favorite quotes. Argue for your limitations, and your limitations you will have. Now really think about that. How many times have you found yourself or listened to somebody else as they argue for their limitations? Well, if you argue for your limitations, that's what you're going to have.
Mm-hmm. Send that ceiling.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm.
Failure is progress. I'm going to speed up here. Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, and of course we will definitely, it's all great content. And I think we've got hopefully maybe, like I said, a sequel. And
absolutely.
Yeah. We would love that. Obviously we would love that from you, James. And this is fantastic stuff. So whichever you kind of want to end on for tonight, and then takeaways, you're good. So
let me, on that note, let's do this then. Let me go back to my control panel here.
So if you want all the answers, fellow community members and people watching us out there, you're gonna have to be, like the YouTube channel, join the Discord. So if you're not in the 5 to 50, go join that too.
Yeah. So I'll start right here. Yeah.
Nice.
And then where's my there it is. Hang on. No, that's not. Hang on. I'll just have to flip through it. Okay. Yeah. This is really important. What we resist, we persist. Will persist, right? And to me, the monkey trap, people who have read my comments, and they know I've talked about this. So here's the physical manifestation of the monkey trap, right? But we do that with ourselves. And that's what's so important to me is failure and being right and things like that. It's very much like the monkey trap, right? We won't let it go. And as a result, we don't get to free ourselves. We get locked into this cycle. That's an important, what is versus perception. And the more aware you become of yourself, the more likely your language will change, the more likely you'll be able to look at a chart cleanly and see what is versus what you want to perceive the chart showing you.
I really understand that.
Yeah, right.
Sir.
There's a lot of pain around that one. Yes.
Yes, sir.
I don't.
And I really, what you bring up a lot of great things that just got my old, the old gears are turning. And Yeah, I really like, what is versus that perception, right? I think we can
Right.
really get caught into that often. And gosh, and I'd really like to have, what it is down.
Yes, right.
Because perception is that, right? And everybody's and perceptions can be different. And until I get that perception fine tuned on my charting, I have to really analyze what is, right? What is price telling me, right?
Yeah.
I use those rules
exactly,
to kind of govern
right?
those emotions. Yeah.
Like, you just listen to David talk about it. And, this morning, he eventually drew out 1, 2, 3, right? He said, this is what I was thinking about when I looked at that chart. So in his mind, he was looking that far ahead and seeing 1, 2, 3. But Brandon, all he was seeing was the immediate 3 or 4 candles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't looking beyond that. And that's not bad. I'm just saying that's where he was,
right.
And that's what he's doing. And so David's at this place where he's looking that far ahead. So he's looking to where, like, what is it Gretzky talks about? I just put myself where I know the puck's going to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so ultimately that's what I heard David saying.
Right.
This morning, right? I'm planning where the market's going to be. So he literally is not chasing the market. He's literally planning ahead and letting the market come to him. And that's a powerful thing. All right. So contextual, understanding that we are contextual in nature, that the context of where we are, right? What we're doing, our emotions, all these things impact us. And in one context, we might be really, really strong and mentally very, very sound and emotionally very sound. But we change the context and we might lose some of that strength, right? And we have to understand that. That's part of that imperfection. Because the better we come to understanding the context, and it may even apply to your trading. So you have things happening, and maybe even if you were journaling, keeping track of those kind of things. Well, today, this is what happened. This is what was on my mind. And when I came into this trading session, all of that was on my mind, but it was very distracting, even though I worked my best not to have it be distracting, right? And so when we begin to learn those things, so there's one, recognizing context, and the other thing is then as you begin to master these things, it's finding flow, right? When you start to find that flow state, then distractions move away. But that, like you said, that's a sequel. So, and this quote, I love this quote. I think it was critical to everything that's being discussed today. The easiest person to deceive is one's own self. Right?
Yep.
It's so easy to lie to yourself.
Yep.
And that's why what is versus perception can be such a challenging thing, right? It's really easy for us to look at through the eyes of our perception and say, well, this is what it is. I know this is what it is. But yet what is really quite different.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, and I think if we, probably just sequel it there.
Okay.
And kind of, well, I did want to ask a couple questions, just to, maybe just one, and for you, James, and then, maybe open it up a little bit to the community.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
For this last part. So I guess, because a lot of things registered with me, and again, I really keep going back to the I know that, right? I know that, but yeah. I guess maybe, for you, how can us as traders, maybe with some of, what this knowledge or these tools that you in this discussion, I guess, how do you feel that what could they maybe do to implement some of this into their own trading if they are running into the same issues?
Okay. I think that's a great question. Well, let me ask a question to David. And so David, what did it take for you to come to terms with what is on the chart?
As opposed to perception, I believe.
Yeah, as opposed to perception, right? At some point, instead of looking at these 5 candles that are working and they're pushing down or pushing up, at some point you said, wait a second, I'm thinking there's going to be a 2 and a 3 push here. And now because of that, I'm going to change how I'm approaching it. I'm no longer going to be chasing the market. And you may not have said chasing the market, but what was it that changed how you began to interact with that?
I don't think you're looking for one defining moment. I don't think that there is
Well, I don't.
one
Yeah,
defining moment.
I'm just asking if there's something that comes to mind.
It's just a myriad of a lot of different things. So honestly, for me, really, it was, I watched a lot of Sean trading. Now, Sean's my mentor.
Right.
But I will say this, that Sean he did not do a good enough job of explaining what he was thinking when he was trading. And so I had to figure out what he was thinking when he was trading. So if that makes sense. And so, it does. Through the process of trial and error, I had to eventually come up with my own thing of like, okay, why did that work for him, but not for me? And I kept doing that and doing it until I'm like, okay, I see. And then, it's very difficult to, it really is difficult to kind of explain the process. And I think every single trader has to go through their own process of experimentation and failure.
Sure. But there's one thing that I gleaned from what you just shared. And I think it answers Jimmy's question. And that is that if we're not asking ourselves questions, and not just questions, but questions that are effective for us, you'll always be locked into that perception. Like, so I heard you talk about, David, how why didn't this work for me, right? And you begin to ask those questions. Well, those are really very thoughtful questions, right? They bring you to a really tangible place when you're trading. And so you have to begin, now you're beginning to focus specifically, not generally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the one thing I will say and have always said, the one thing that kind of made me a better trader is I went from being frustrated and psychologically tormented over losses to changing my perception, which is a great word that you're using, to I have an opportunity to learn from my losses. Instead of being frustrated at the losses, I changed my perception to be like, what can I learn from this? And when I started to perceive that a loss was just a learning opportunity, I would study my losses and I would go back and figure out why I lost. And that to me really changed my trading around. And I learned that not to trust the market, or not to chase the market, not to trust the market. The market was a bad teacher. And that's when I started learning all those things. Was like, a loss to me was an opportunity for growth if I allowed it to be. So,
I love that phrase. And you said that this morning.
And that's a great answer.
The market is a bad teacher. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a great answer to that question, for sure. Because from what my takeaway is, first off, you allowed yourself to ask those questions, right?
Yes.
Why?
Yes.
You allowed yourself to ask those questions. And then you also said the experimentation is different with every trader, right? And I really get that as you got to be trading. Right. You got to be experimenting. You got to be trading. You got to be in there and getting into the market. Even if somebody, I talked to a lot of new traders, they're hesitant, right, just to start placing those trades. But you really got to do that. You got to really do that. And then, going back and then finding out what that perception was for you, David, and then going back and figuring out why you lost, right? Why you lost. I think that helps, or maybe from what I can do is, back test or go back to plot those trades and go back. And then I think that I can start to turn market perception of where the market's going to move, where I feel it's going to move, into actually recognizing the price patterns and what it actually is.
Where you feel or you want the market, want to feel the market's going to go, right?
Yeah,
Instead of A or B.
Yeah. And so that really answered that question. And gosh, and again, I appreciate everybody's, involvement, and, again, just another fantastic class. I know we're running a little bit over, but I think we might be okay if we have just a couple questions, if there's anything that's out there.
Sure. I'm game.
From our community. So yeah, if anybody has anything, I didn't see anything posted quite yet as far as, but yeah, any questions?
Let me ask you, since nobody else, since everybody's thinking, everybody's like,
thinking,
how
right?
can I do this? I want to ask questions for you, James.
Okay.
Like, you're one that I've noticed that is quick to drop and the answer whenever somebody has a question or a problem or frustration. In chat, you're one to quickly go to the psychological answer, right?
Yeah.
You kind of tend to drop that, which I appreciate and I create. But why do you put so much value and so much stock in psychology versus maybe skills, pattern, strategy?
Yeah,
you know
I
what
get
I mean?
that. I get that. So we all have a pattern. I mean, when we get to a place where we can maintain profit and be profitable consistently, that we tend to have a go-to pattern, right? A go-to method and stuff. And I guess what it took me to get to that place. So like if I struggle with a wobble, I immediately start hedging, right? So I flow back to the hedging. And so for me, the psychological aspect of it is it has allowed me because to stay engaged in the markets in a way that I'm not making myself out to be wrong or bad or something like that. It's not personalized. And I think that's an extremely valuable thing. I know when I was younger, when I would compete, I would talk myself out of matches. I literally would. Like I would psychologically lose the match. I was a sprinter and hurdler and long jumper. There were often times when I just looked at that competitor and I totally psyched myself out. And so I guess so for me, that's a part of my journey, right? Like the mechanics of the trading to me are simple. They're the easy part. Now I'm working to understand the wobble aspects, right? The price cycles and those things. Sure. And so I'm not locked in on that right now, but I'm working through that. But to me, it's still a very clear process. Like it just doesn't, like there's not a lot of resource that has to go into that, right? It's maintaining myself in the middle of it. So, so psychologically, I think I think the traders that don't have a psychological understanding, a psychological strength or resolve, I think they tend to build rules. I think this is really what the answer is, David. I find that they tend to create trading rules that are artificial in what they do. The boundaries they create, the support they create is artificial in that it doesn't really address the actual issue that is coming to play, right? So they say, well, like even this morning, okay, I'm up 3%, I'm done for the day. Well, and you asked the question towards the end, at one point you said, well, is that fear talking? And I think, see, that's the thing. It's okay to have that rule, but understand what the rule is actually, what the purpose of that rule is serving. Is it fear or is it is it genuinely that you're at this place and you're trading for the day that it's just time to stop? And so the only way to get to come to terms with that is through understanding yourself. And I think the other part too is that the what of the training. Like, I know everybody says why, but I like to say I look at it from a what. So what is it? What is your purpose for trading? And if you don't really understand that, then all you're doing is chasing profit. And profit in and of itself at the most simplistic form is nothing more than income. Well, if all you want is income, why don't you just take a job? Because a job's a hell of a lot easier. And so I'm serious.
I love it. No, I love it.
And so if you, the only way to understand what you want is to do that personal work, to go internal.
Yeah.
And that's the only way that I'm aware of it. And if you haven't done that, because once you actually come to terms with what you really want to get out of trading, the cost of it, like Jimmy, not having that time with his daughter and those moments, that's a tremendous cost, right? That resolve actually can change how he copes with days that are off, where he's just a little bit off. He doesn't become so emotional about it because he understands that the reason he's doing that is to have this time over here with his daughter. And we all have something that drives us, right? And that does tend to come back to a psychological element. Trading in the zone. He didn't, I can't think of his name right now, but he didn't trade, and he did that intentionally to stay in integrity with the work he did. But everything he talked about was psychological.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, derivative. I mean, honestly, it's just been one of my favorite classes. For sure.
I appreciate.
Did that make sense, David?
Yeah, but first and foremost, I appreciate you taking the time, because again, you don't have to do this. What you're doing, taking the time to do this, is you're imparting people. And I will always say this, and I will continue to say this, that you have to master the psychological aspect of trading before you can master the income aspect of trading, right? And there's so many different ways that people look at it. And I get excited because I get the opportunity to work with people that have various perceptions of the market. And it excites me because I get to try to see through their lens. And I don't always do the best job at it, but I'm learning how to do that. And because that to me is truly where one starts to excel in trading and in life, when they understand that it's the psychology and how to master one's thoughts and behaviors is really going to excel. And everybody who trades doesn't do it because they love it. I'm sure there are people that do, but we're all glued together because we all want what everybody wants, and that's having financial freedom. Mm-hmm. And that's the glue that holds us all together. But when we get into trading, the ones that stick with it are the ones that really enjoy the process of learning and enjoy the psychology of it. Because if you were like you just mentioned earlier, trading is difficult. Go get a job if you want money. But trading is something that if you can do, will give you that financial freedom or life freedom, not even financial freedom.
Yeah, life freedom. Absolutely. And for me, that's everything. I mean, it is about the quality of my life.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I appreciate your comments too, Jerry. You said it's a new puzzle to analyze. Absolutely, the market's new every single day, and you're not going to be able to identify it unless you have time in the seat, right? And ultimately, that's what it comes down to. But again, I would like to really, really thank you, James, for taking the time to put this together, put your thoughts together, to being a trader that has a skill set of psychology and then imparting that skill set to everybody here and also who's going to be watching the video. So again, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Oh, no, thank you for asking me to be here. That I was excited when I got Jimmy's little message. I was like, oh, yes.
Yeah, no. Again, I think these are just so valuable, right? For we go over a ton of different topics. We always try to apply it to trading in some way, but again, it's just helping the community, I think, as a whole, right? And so, again, appreciate everybody for attending, giving their time and interaction with us. Just maybe one last thing too. That's just kind of bringing to my mind that we're talking about psychology, right? And the top traders, once they are mastering, or they have the process, right, that we can be able to deal with this trading psychology, the pitfalls that we fall into. So I was going to say, if you have a chance, obviously, or if you have not joined the challenge already, but I'm thinking more about, I think that there's a psychology boot camp that Apiary is going to be doing here in March.
Nice.
I'll have to double check, but
yeah, you watch that video I did. About, did you see it, Jimmy? You probably didn't see it.
I saw
I can't even think. What's it called? Duke just did a glossary of terms. The PTD.
Sean was mentioning to that he said that he was going to do the trade psychology, but I just wasn't on the date. So it's on for sure. Awesome.
If you guys check out.
March 20 to the 24th.
It's a 1 minute video on YouTube that
nice
talks about. It was kind of fun. I don't know. Does anybody see it? That video I dropped.
Maybe it was only 1 minute.
PTD for like 3 days.
What?
We've been going to PTD for like 3 days.
Yeah.
Well, I just think that, definitely, obviously something that we can continue to get better with. So, those boot camps are amazing. So if one has the opportunity to attend, definitely recommend it, right?
Yeah, this is the first psychology boot camp, and I've been telling them they should do it for a while because I'm a big believer in psychology. Mastering one's own thoughts is the key to success, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all right, everybody. Yeah, again, appreciate it. Again, if you haven't already, sign up for the challenge. Sign up for the trading psychology boot camp. If you have questions about anything, let us know. But Dave did a fantastic webinar, about the challenge, and so I think that it's really the only thing that I've seen out there that will give people the resources to really be able to grow, right? As a trader, and no matter if your goal is to be the best trader that you can be, or if you just want to add a little extra income, we want to trade for a living, but it really tests the resolve. We're here to help you. So like I said, if you have not yet, definitely sign up with the challenge. We'd love to have you on board and help you get to $50,000 as soon as we can.
Yeah, that'll change everybody's psychology.
Yeah, no, well,
absolutely, right? Yeah.
Well, then it's the perception, right? It's the perception of now I can spend time with my daughter, or I can have, and I can go, do the things that I need to do to be happy. Not necessarily is the income that's what's making you happy, but that joy that it's bringing, right? That freedom, right?
There's an ease in all of that, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, the ease.
Cool.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, everybody.
And I'm going to go ahead and close it because I'm going to bounce. So thank you guys again. And we will see you guys in the morning. We'll see you guys in the trade room in the morning.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.